Good night, good morning, Luke Mackey. How is it going over in Orlando?
Going very well, thanks, mate. Just clicked over 9 p.m. Had a nice barbecue dinner. 25 degrees again today, so life is good.
Beautiful. Sounds like the Australian dream. Well, Australian dream pre-COVID, but it sounds like you've transitioned into the Florida life, loving it. Been over there for 15 months, you were saying before.
Correct. Yeah, been over here for 15 months. Thoroughly enjoying it. A little different in the last 6 months than sort of the first 6 to 12 months, but with all the golf tours up and running over here, I've got some level of normalcy over here now. So enjoying it.
Yeah, very, very busy, especially, everything's ramped up over there. Everyone's kind of doing the right thing. It's good to see that's happening now, I guess. It's obviously a lot different in Melbourne, but we're not going to talk about COVID. I've just tried to turn off that side of my brain and just get on with life. I think that's all you can do. You can just day to day, and it is what it is. But yeah, I'd love to talk about, how your journey to becoming like the VIS strength and conditioning coach. You obviously it took you a little while to get there, but just your journey from, studies to, when we met, in that VIS training. I think it was one Victorian pennant season. I came over for a couple of things, and yeah, I'd love to hear your, journey from studying to VIS strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I suppose it started at the Rosanna Golf Club, really. I was playing what was Colts pennant at the time for Rosanna and Divi 3. And the head pro at Rosanna was Richard Cooney. He also happened to be the Victorian men's state coach at the time. And he said to me one day, what are you studying, Luke? And I said, I'm doing a sports science degree at Deakin University. He says, we've actually got, I've got Marty Joyce and the VIS golfers coming on Monday for a putting and short game lesson. Do you want to come? I said, great. What an opportunity to, like my lecturers always said, just volunteer as much time as possible.
Absolutely.
So off I trundled. And the very first session, Kieran Pratt rocked up to the session about 15 minutes late. And Marty Joyce turned to me after a g'day. He said, mate, he's turned up 15 minutes late. Can you just physically punish him? So my first introduction to higher level amateur golf was making Kieran Pratt do a walking lunge up and down the hills of the Rosanna driving range. For anyone who's ever been there, it's basically off a cliff. So Pratty wasn't too happy with his first meeting with me, but that's where it started. And I was very lucky that at the time with the national program, not only did we have Moona Links where all the national camps were, but I had Marty Joyce, who was heavily involved at the time. Ryan Lumsden, Ramsey McMaster, Darren Lay were all involved. Obviously, the Golf Australia office was in Melbourne, so I quickly met Brad James, Matt Cutler. It's probably my first introduction to you at one of the national camps on the sand dunes.
Yeah.
So I spent during my time at university, I did just short of 2 years with the Essendon Football Club. I did 2 years with Melbourne Storm. About 18 months with the Victorian Institute of Sport, all unpaid internships. Fortunately, unfortunately, my time at Melbourne Storm stopped because there was a salary cap issue. My time at Essendon Football Club stopped because there was a drug saga.
Oh, wow.
And no issues with the VIS. So, got my first full-time position at the VIS. So I was there for 4 years, and golf was, one of my main squads. And I was very lucky at the time that I happened to be just a strength and conditioning coach that loved golf. I was still playing pennant for Rosanna. Got my handicap down to scratch, although most people listening to this podcast probably don't believe that. That's when the new handicap system came in, not a true scratch.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved being able to spend time with young aspiring athletes, and something that Ramsey McMaster always used to say is you guys were some of the most competitive, hardworking ones out there because you had to do it all yourself. So I was very attracted to that. And then all these opportunities opened up in regards to travel. So I had a few years with the Victorian state team. I travelled across to Adelaide and down to Tassie. I think you might have played in one or both of those series.
Both of them, I remember them.
Yeah, both of those. So I spent days doing urine tests for hydration. We were doing weigh-ins. We were doing warm-ups at all hours of the morning. Tassie Golf Club was freezing that week. I caddied for Todd Sinnott, Jeff Drakeford, Ryan Ruffles, Lucas Herbert, Nathan Holman. That was against the likes of yourself and Cam Smith. And so I had a really good opportunity to meet and greet everyone, and then also all the coaches at the time too. So, you know, Richie Smiths, Tony Myers, were all down there at the time. And I was just able to meet everyone and sort of become involved. And then, sort of fast forward a few more years, and Brad James tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Do you want to sort of take over the national program and sort of lead our sports science, sports medicine department?" So that's eventually sort of where it's got me to today, and being full-time based in Orlando.
Mate, it's a cool journey, one I've followed, you know, a bunch of, and it's nice to kind of intertwine a lot of those stories. I remember the Gunnamatta days, you know, running up those sand dunes. Awful. It's funny you actually bring up, you know, a walking lunge story first thing with Kieran Pratt, and because I remember some of those Gunnamatta days are just horrific down there with Ramsey, and, you know, just used to, like, we used to get a bit of him in WA, you know, when he came over, and we had the dunes there are crazy as well. Like, he used to take us backpacking into a lot of different areas where now there's houses, you know, especially north of kind of Joondalup. But yeah, I think those are coming back to, you know, his mentality of how competitive we were down there was, I can still hear, you know, yelling us to get up that mountain. But yeah, what a man Ramsey was. Sadly passed now, 9 years, crazy enough. But yeah, how you obviously work with him quite a bit, you know, and like coming through the ranks of everything. His was just a great, really, just a legend. I heard a couple of podcasts with Pete Cowan. He's speaks about him really fondly, and, you know, they were working together on a lot of things. And yeah, I'd love to, you know, hear a few experiences you've had with Ramsey.
Yeah, Ramsey was just an amazing man. He was extremely eccentric. Anyone had come across him, my first introduction to Ramsey was at his clinic, and it was through Richard Cooney, and said, "You got to meet this guy." And I was thrust into the clinic late one night, and all of a sudden I'm just, you know, in this room with like two young golfers, shirts off, you know, chalk drawings all over their body, watching their posture, how they move. And then, you know, within 2 weeks, I'm spending a full day in the clinic working with him. And, you know, Praddy was in that first group. You know, Matty Jager spent a lot of time in Melbourne at that time. Jin Jong as well. Minji Lee came across and spent a fair bit of time as well. And it was not just the technical knowledge that he had, but his ability to bring a lot of people together. So, you know, if Ramsey said, "Hey, Brady, you got to jump this high," I go, "Yeah, sure, mate. Where do you want me to jump, and how high, and for how long?" And you just did it because you know, you're very trusting of him. And he spent many years on the road traveling around. And I think one of the biggest strengths of Ramsey was the fact that he was working with multiple associations across the world. So he was amateur and professional. So, you know, he some of the first videos he showed me was Danny Willett, you know, working on a range at 7 p.m. at night, the freezing cold, you know, doing it, as I always used to say, you know, he's shirtless down the back of the range, hitting balls, saying, "I've got this feel, I got this feel." And, you know, fast forward 8 years after that, and Danny's winning the Masters, and you think, well, you know, something must have been going right. I actually walked 9 holes with Curtis at the US Open 3 weeks ago. He played with Danny Willett, and we were talking about Ramsey. And I thought, what a crazy experience. Like, you know, Ramsey introduced me to you on a video in Melbourne, and here I am 10 years later, and you're playing in the US Open, you know, as a major winner. So he was that type of person. You go across the world, so many people talk about him, and a lot of his philosophies and guiding principles of what he did are starting to be looked at more in research now. And people are thinking, you know, once upon a time it was a crazy Scotsman, you know, half naked on a beach, and now a lot of that, you know, sort of holds true in regards to posture and movement and things like that. So yeah, he definitely was ahead of his time in a lot of what he did.
Yeah, we got a gold mine of a man, you know, especially down in Victoria and, you know, Australia. A lot of those camps, I don't think. Well, obviously being a player, I wasn't really sure what he was doing, but it was all postural stuff and just really, you know, firing the glutes and all that. Like, it's so relevant. You think of it now, and you think if we understood what he knew then, now we'd probably be better off. But, you know, he left such a legacy, and it's just like we're trying to all figure it out now. But, you know, how much are you pushing some of those techniques that you learned, you know, back in the day with him now in, you know, obviously physical fitness and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've still prescribed. I mean, I've still got a couple of Ramsey belts that I travel with, and I've worked with players who still use it. it's the greatest connection I can have from a strength and conditioning point of view to a golf coach. It's that middle ground. It's that middle point that we both can work towards. If a golf coach is talking about posture or rotation or something technical, and I'm talking about a physical part of that golfer that needs to be improved, and it is that middle ground. So I still use belt drills definitely with players, and it forms a lot of warm ups. It's always been fantastic and something you can do anywhere in the world. And as you know, being a pro golfer, you don't always have the perfect environment to be training and competing and looking after yourself. So a Ramsey belt and the drills and the philosophy still hold true.
Yeah, they're spot on. I actually saw a video of Kevin Kirk doing some drills in the gym. I was thinking, geez, even KK's he's still working it, and that legacy lives on. And we got so blessed with Ramsey. A lot of those, especially those training camp days, were crazy. I heard about him coming from WA and had the opportunity with Golf Australia, and it was like I like to say I spent a couple of winters, involved with seeing how the top state does it all. That was kind of my vision of it. You guys had the resources and the facilities to really, you could see why you had so many great golfers coming through, and you still have them coming through now. And it really opened my eyes to, really taking a look into recovery, strength and, things you have to do every day to really, get the best out of yourself and create the best body for you. I was so thankful to be a part of that. And it's crazy to see a lot of the players that have come through that system over the years. It's been nuts, like lots of winners. You touched on Lucas Herbert, Ryan Ruffles, Nathan Holman, European Tour winner. And, the list is so long. It's just ridiculous. It's crazy to look back on. I always, like a lot of these episodes I've done, I think, geez, that actually happened. I remember playing a few events with Tommy Fleetwood and thinking, oh, you hit it pretty good or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. But you've moved on from VIS, I think, kind of now, a couple of years out of the system now. And
yeah, so full-time with Golf Australia now. I've been in that role now for just under 3 years. And so just under 4 years. So the first 2 years I was based in Melbourne and spent a lot of time traveling with the rookie pros, which we have about 14 or 15 that we support, and then traveling with the national team. So Asian amateur teams, world amateur teams. When the guys and girls are over here competing at US amateurs, Western amateurs, British amateurs, and Q schools as well has been a big focus for me. So. Something that Ramsey wanted to do many years ago, and one of the reasons why we had the Golf Australia National Camp in Houston was a lot to do with what Ryan Lumsden and Ramsey McMaster set up in the early days with Marty Joyce and a few of those players. So Praddy was in that initial group, and having a bit of a base overseas. So I've been here, as I said, over 12 months, and currently I've got 2 players playing Symetra Tour event in Florida next week at the house. Trav Smythe's been over here. He missed Monday this week for Corn Ferry Tour, and Brett Coletta's playing the Corn Ferry Tour this week at Orange County National. So all those guys and girls that have come through the program now got a bit of a base to spend some time at. So
yeah,
very cool.
It's cool that that I'm focusing on VIS base, but a lot of people just come through that system. And what, in your eyes, what do you think made it so superior to other states, or was it just it wasn't a coincidence? You guys worked so hard down there. Like, what do you think made it such a good stepping stone for a lot of players onto these bigger tours that we're seeing a lot of the players that went through that system are now on?
I think we're very lucky to have the VIS. I know the VIS and QAS support golf and Golf Australia really well. So very lucky to have those facilities. We had access to sports science, strength and conditioning, physiology, recovery, and then it allowed Marty Joyce to be involved on quite a full-time basis with the squad. A lot of the other states had like yourself, it was you, Gossie, Minji, Hannah, all had your own coach and your own space, and we're starting to talk about the strength of that system as well as the VIS system. On the opposite end, you guys sort of come out very, very independent straight away. The VIS squad had probably a far superior amateur system, and then the guys and girls have sort of found their feet as they gone after that. So I think it was a bit of a culture, you know, the Melbourne Sandbelt. So we just had a lot of kids playing a lot of golf. The Melbourne pennant system, or the Victorian pennant system. So there's just a culture of a lot of golf. It's fun and it's good and it's cool to be elite at golf at 15 in Melbourne, because you're going to have a lot of friends. So that means we have a big pool to choose from. And once you've got that bigger pool, you're inevitably going to have some kids that sort of rise to the top. And a lot of the kids, funnily enough, that were very, very good 5-10 years ago are still very, very good now, and are winning on the European Tour. And so yeah, amazing.
It's it's cool you talk about, you know, that if you're 15 in Melbourne, and it's really cool to be good at golf. Like, definitely, like, I live in Melbourne now, and I'm not 15, I'm double that now, 30. It's over the hump, whatever it is. But, you know, remember at, you know, Peninsula Kingswood, and it's just this feeling, if you're a good golfer at a great golf course, there's a feeling that is associated with that. And, you know, being a teenager, that creates that competitiveness and, you know, that culture you lead into. And there's just so many good players, and, you know, you can only select a handful of guys, you know, to be in I'm not sure the number of how many can be in the VIS or the fixed state team, but there's a lot of fringe players that, you know, are still really good at what's something you can do for those players, like, as well, because, you know, there's just so many good players in Victoria.
Well, what we've done over the last couple of years is looking at that group and trying to work out how we can provide opportunities to not just the top 5 to 10 kids in any state, but have opportunities for the best juniors. And often it was probably in my time at the VIS, maybe it's like your numbers sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 in the state team that might not have been in the VIS. What can we help them with? And just trying to help in that daily training environment. So we have like a tier 2 and a tier 3 program now in Australia that allows those kids to have opportunities for some coaching and competitive sessions. So instead of just the 8 weeks before the interstate series, now it's across the whole year. Nothing was better than that. I mean, you would know, if you had a WA session and it's, you know, you and Gossy maybe going head to head for 9 holes, and you had Curtis in there as well, you guys, you know, just your competitive juices flowing. You're not all at the same golf club. You don't always have the same coach, but all of a sudden a state squad session becomes some of the best. You know, you just want to beat them in a chipping comp, a putting comp, a long drop, whatever it is, you want to be better than them. So creating that culture of competitive practice is what I think we've been striving for in the last couple of years, that allows the kids to push each other.
Yeah, it's a great model, that whole year-long competitive nature, especially for those 4, 5, 6, 7 on the list or whatever it is. I remember a lot of my state, you know, camps, we weren't on a yearly basis. It was more touching with your own coach. You're on your own kind of singular journey. You know, it's kind of how this professional journey goes. And you're kind of looking back on it, probably a bit of a blessing in disguise. It's not really a team sport, but it is. You've kind of got to build your team up around you. It's not a team and then you're in it. So we had ours probably more 2 months before the series, and it was very competitive. I'd say it wasn't like a 9-hole matches or anything. It was, you know, structured short game sessions, and, you know, we're going head to, like you said, going head to head with Curtis. You know, I was in there in his first couple of years, so he's, you know, I still see him as like a 15-year-old kid. I think he actually had a belly putter, which was really crazy. Like, he putted really well with a belly putter, and I haven't seen a kid that ever did that at that age. And I don't know, he's really flourished into a player now, and it was really awesome to see him win. You know, probably a month ago now, but yeah, it's just awesome for his confidence. You know, I know he's going through a few changes now, and, you know, obviously see the same coach, and it's a lot harder for him to kind of relay the messages. And it's different systems. I think WA does a very good job at letting you see other coaches and different service providers, and then you kind of funnel your way into whether you make it into a Golf Australia high performance squad, or, you know, we're very lucky to have that avenue for, you know, the rookie program and, you know, the higher level stuff. That was awesome. My first year, that was just fantastic. And how's that program looking these days? You know, the high performance rookie program.
Yeah, really good. Obviously, we've got some extremely successful athletes at the moment. I think every athlete in the squad in 2019 kept their status or improved their status. That was maybe a first for the group. everyone got through. The 3 or 4 that needed to get through Q school or keep their cards did it. And that allows them and their teams to, as you say, a bit like in WA, really form good bonds, full structure, full schedule. I'm very obsessed with the schedule. So if you've got a job on any tour, that means you and your team can get together and sort of talk about what the next 6 to 9 to 12 months looks like, and where, you know, competitive sits in there, where you're going to need to be doing some maintenance work, technically, physically, mentally. So yeah, the program's set up really, really well now for individuals, as you say, individuals to build their team and succeed with their team. And that's the nature of elite golf these days, professional golf. You've got to have your 3 to 6 people that work for you. And as I say, all professional golfers are the youngest CEOs in the world, and they're going to manage staff that are far, far, far more experienced in their areas. And it's just a very weird environment. 22-year-old kid telling a 45-year-old physio how they want to look for the rest of the year, and that physio's got to work in, and there's some dynamics of that relationship that need to be managed. So I mean, that's something the AIS and Golf Australia are working really hard on at the moment. We've you know, part of my role is athlete wellbeing and engagement, so the education for an athlete and a coach, and how they need to develop, and how they drive their relationships, how they're going to drive themselves. You know, you were talking about before how you're studying now. We've got some athletes that are still competing, that are studying, probably for the first time in a long time. And athletes talking about how they can better themselves off the golf course, and how they can communicate better in a pro-am, how they can look after their taxes better, you know, how they're going to buy a house, you know, the real world things that actually make you a little more clearer on course. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Coming back to your scheduling thing, you know, how is there any trends to how many weeks players are thinking about playing now, and kind of, you know, practicing outside of that, and kind of working on, you know, self-development stuff? Because, you know, like you see a lot of I'm going like elite, like Rory and that, they're playing 20 weeks a year, and the other 32 weeks they're kind of working on themselves and downtime and actually living life. Are you seeing trends more with your players coming through now?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, particularly for the girls, I think it's probably the top. It works out to be about the top 30. For the men, it's the top 50, and that's your platinum tour. That's the WGCs, the invitationals, all the majors. They're normally spaced out across the year, so the best players can play in the best venues all across the year. So those individuals have a very set schedule. You know, a Bay Hill, apart from the COVID years, but a Bay Hill, a Masters, a US Open, FedEx Cup, the CME Globe, the Asian Swing for the girls, you know, which is normally sort of this time of year. Those things are really set in stone. So your best players will always aim to peak around that. And if you're trying to peak and plan it, it means all of a sudden you've got times in a year where you go, you know what, I'm having a week off. I'm going away. I'm a LPGA player. I play full time in America. After Evian, I'm going for a week in Paris, or I just want to go travel in the Maldives, wherever it might be, Greek islands. But you can actually set your schedule and have time off. Whereas a young Australian male or female coming over, you go Q school, back home for Christmas. Then it's like the first few events. Oh, I didn't get into that one. I've got to try Monday in for that one. And
crazy.
On and off. You don't know when you're playing, when you're not playing. You can't get a caddy. You can't get your coach over. So I've been a big one for schedules for a long time, definitely.
Yeah, I think, you know, you being over in Orlando now kind of definitely helps with a lot of those players that, especially the up and coming ones. I think even your first 5 to 7 years on tour, you're trying to cement yourself on a tour. So you're in that top 50, you're in that, you know, structured schedule year to year to year. And it obviously gets so much easier over time, you know. I've just noticed my reality now in Melbourne, Monday to Friday, life is very simple when you've got a structured schedule, and that's 6 months of my life so far. And it's like, oh, I can actually get gains through fitness or, you know, mental health or whatever it is. Yeah, you being over there helping those players, I think it's important. I think there's so much to say about that, because, you know, you can't see your coach, you can't see your family, your friends, you can't do a lot of normal things in life. And I think that's probably the biggest transition thing for a touring professional in their first couple of years, is you've got to kind of give up your idea of reality, what a normal looks like. And I think that's hard for some people. I think it's probably not spoken about, it kind of feels like you can do everything you can, but you miss out on so many things. I've missed so many birthdays, weddings, and that's just the life, you know.
Definitely. I mean, so this week alone, we've had a dinner every night this week with 4 to 10, probably 10 different players, male and female players, talking about life on the road, life on tour, what the relationship with caddies, what they do in a pro-am, who they've got their frequent fly program with, how they got a credit card when they first, all those little things. And it's actually, sometimes it's not even me having to say anything. I'm just here with the house and everyone comes in and they can talk to each other and support each other, which goes all the way back to the national camps. Like I had 4, I call them kids, 4 kids in here the other day. They're all at the same, junior national camp like 8 years ago. And here they are all in Orlando on 3 different tours, and it's amazing. So that's why we're here. And then plus we've got a lot of support in America, just with the likes of Kari Webb, particularly for the girls. Sarah Jane Smith and Sarah Kemp also live here in Orlando. So, both of them have lived over here for sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and know the landscape. They know what America's like. They know the tricks. They know which tournaments to travel to early, which ones you can go late to, all those types of things. Caddies, if you're coming over here fresh and you're Monday into an event, need a caddy at the last minute, I know so-and-so who knows so-and-so, this person's really good. All that type of stuff's really, really important. So we're just building. I mean, we're a very, very small nation when it comes to golf. So we're just building our big golf family over here, which is really important.
No, it's definitely very important. I think I moved over there in the end of 2014, early 14, and, big eye-opening for me. Traveled a lot around the world, but, you've got to figure out your social security and you've got to figure out where you live and just all these credit card things, and tax obviously is a big thing, and different state things. And it's a big thing for a kid when they're early 20s, and I think a lot of players will be better off now that, there's a presence there, especially with the players that have played on the tour for 20 years. You touched on a few of those players that have just been on those tours for ages, and that's very helpful. I think some players in the past might have felt through the cracks. They kind of got out there for a couple of years and they chose to do other things. A couple of players that I'd always kind of think about, especially because those VIS days. I remember watching, funny actually, I remember when Scotty won the Masters because we had a VIS session that day.
I was going to say that one, yeah.
And I was very, very happy because we're just doing a massive squat session that day. And you were like, yep, boys, stop. Scotty's about to win this. And we all sat down and watched it. And I think still after we had to finish the session, but it was, I remember just the people in the room. It was Todd Sinnott, Nathan Holman, Jeff Drakeford. I think Min G was there at the time, Sue O, Ruffles, Lucas Herbert. It was just a crazy, all piled in watching on this small little TV, watching Scotty hold that putt on the 10th at Augusta. That was a pretty special moment. I think it's crazy where everyone's kind of ended up now. And, especially I like to sometimes think about, Holman, European tour, came through the whole system. Obviously thought he was just an amazing player coming through. Him and Jeff were just freak athletes, like strength wise, technique wise. And you kind of look at, obviously Nate won and it was fantastic. And just how his progression of his career, he really had a full go on the European tour. I just like to kind of reflect on, why he isn't playing now. Obviously something's happened, or that's his own story to tell. But, from a strength and conditioning coach that's grown up with this kid, I'm not too sure when you guys started together, but a long time, he's skinny kid into the biggest muscles you've ever seen, but him and Drake's. But yeah, it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on, what you kind of saw as a coach where these players kind of went their separate ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest part is the realities of what professional golf is. And as you say, you move overseas by yourself and you have to employ people. You got to start. It's like saying, I'll go to uni in Melbourne for 3 years. And then the first thing you got to do when you finish your uni degree is go start a business overseas. You have no idea the tax system. You have no idea. You have no friends. No one. Competing against all these other people who are also trying to set up the same business as you. Professional golf and amateur golf are really, really different. I use AFL as an example all the time. If I'm 16, 17 playing TAC Cup football in Melbourne,
Mm.
everyone knows what my pathway is. You know, I'll go to the draft, might play some years in VFL for my affiliate club, you know, get picked up by Carlton or Essendon or Collingwood. I got 1, 2, 3 years on the list as a rookie. Might play a few games. Then I got another opportunity to go to another club. If I'm performing, you know, I have somewhere between 3 and 10 years. If I'm going okay, and it's pretty transparent. If you're good, you're good, and off you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Golf can be anything.
Mm.
Am I going to go to the Canadian Tour? Am I going to go to Latin America? Corn Ferry Tour? Am I going to Symetra, LET? Stay in Australia for a year or two? Go to LPGA Q School? For the girls, you got Japan. The boys got Japan. There's Asian Tour for the men. So there's, you know, which way do you go and why? You and your coach and your team probably formulate a bit of an idea about where your strengths and weaknesses lie. So I know for Nath, he obviously had some early success, and Gossie as well. And I'm speaking to both the boys. They're both back in Australia now, and both working and studying and really enjoying life. And that's the thing. I think both of them did not enjoy what professional golf was, and it's very lonely. A lot of you definitely know it can be a very lonely sport. A lot of people don't like spending a lot of time on their own overseas. It's not it's not enjoyable.
Not for everyone,
So
that's for sure.
no, it's not for everyone. And that's why I'm very, very big in spending as much time as I can when I'm out. Like last year on tour, you know, I think I'd spent an hour in the gym with Minwoo at the Scandinavian Masters, and then I had Adam Bland, Jason Scrivener, and Brett Rumford come in, and I just chatted to the boys about why are you still out here? Why are you still doing it? How did you do it? And, you know, there's all these little things that they picked up along the way, and you look at these guys, they're very, very driven, very resilient, very, very comfortable in their own skin, and have worked their butts off for a long period of time, and it's just a very, very hard lifestyle. To be that far away from people for such a long period of time. So that's why, you know, with Golf Australia now, we're very, very big on creating a team around you. And if we can provide as many experts in different areas for you as possible and open your eyes so that by the time you come out, you know, like Lucas Herbert, Cameron Davis are two people who are having some tremendous results in the last 12 months. You know, two of our newest guys in the men's side have had top 100 results. They've got fully fledged teams. You know, they employ 4 to 5 people on a full to part-time basis, who are really, really dedicated to them and their careers. So that's just how it is, how it works. And Hannah and Sue and Minji are much the same. It's kind of what it takes, and they're up against some seriously good competitors. So yeah,
it's a competitive game. You know, whether it's, you know, both sides of the ball. It's nuts. It's really, really, really tough. And just embracing the journey. You see those guys that have been on tour for 20 years. They don't see it as kind of things I've taken. They don't see it as a week to week thing. It's kind of week to week to get better at something, but it's a journey over. They see it this far. It's not, you know, kind of going back to footy. You know, you've got your 3 to 5 year window that you might get 10, and you're 30 and it's over. You know, for a lot of them, there's too many injuries. For golf, it's like, you don't know. You know, you could be a fantastic senior player. You know, you could hit your first year on tour when you're 35. You might get there when you're 21, like a Spieth or something. But it's just being ready for when it happens and having a team around you and just being ready for all to happen. You know, I think looking back on a lot of it for me, 23, I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure where I was going to live in the world. And it's a big step. You know, you see a lot of people go down the management company wise. They kind of get people employed to kind of help them take care of that stuff off the field, I say off the court. I'm thinking of NBA because the whole Lakers show is going on now. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's I think it's a decision you have to have with people that are close to you. It's definitely a lot. It's great now that you're over there. Like, I just see it as such a clear thing. You're an Aussie. You're kind of coming over there to the US, checking with Mackey. You know, he's got a good coffee machine now. I think apparently you might have one over there. But it's Yeah, it's good. It's cool. It's cool to see kind of the progression of this whole thing, and yeah, it's you touching on about different things with Min Woo and how he's going as well, because he's crushing it.
100%. Yeah, same thing for Minwoo. He's got an unbelievable caddy on the bag at the moment. Shane
Mm.
Joel, who I think a lot of the WA crew have had
Hmm.
over the journey, and such a great person to have it for us to rely on. And yeah, you just got to have good people around you as often as you can.
Yeah, probably the simplest way to say it. That's kind of it. And try learn something more every day. That's pretty much the quickest way to say it. But yeah, getting I had one question written down here. What makes a good golf body? Like, I think that's a probably good rounded thing. You've seen a lot of bodies. Obviously, Ramsey Days, everyone's got their shirt off and they're doing it. I remember still. It's really funny you bring that up, but it's so relevant. Yeah, what makes a great golf body, in your opinion?
I actually had this. Someone asked me this recently. It was actually a parent asked me this, and
Okay.
they were coming from a very genuine background. Their son is already a pro, and they said, what, why do they squat? Why do they have to do gym? And sort of went through it, and I started reeling off all these names, and I went, a Lucas Herbert, a Ryan Ruffles, a Nathan Holman, Minji Lee, Hannah Green, Suo, and I just kept going through, and I thought, pound for pound, naturally, they were always very, very strong.
Hmm.
They could always squat very well, could always deadlift very well, technically well, and could also move a lot of weight. Relative load, so how much load you can lift relative to your body weight. All of those guys and girls fit over. I sort of have like a 1.2 to 1.5 for lower body for a squat, and
Hmm.
sort of 1.5 to 2 times body weight for a deadlift, and all of that cohort fit into it.
Hmm.
Um, they quite a lot of them have just some natural flexibility, natural range of motion, um, and then ultimately they've been extremely consistent. All of that group that I mentioned, and I say those because I started working with all of them when they were amateurs, and not that I work with all of them now, but they're people that I still communicate with now and see, and the consistency of what they do over a long period of time, just chipping away at it. They're
Hmm.
not necessarily the most obsessed with being strong and powerful. Naturally, very strong lower body, have the requisite level of mobility to get the job done technically. There's no one in that group that you go, oh, they have to stretch more, they have to do more mobility, more this. They're just naturally the right amount of everything.
Hmm.
So I'd say I often use the analogy of like a striker, a midfielder, and a defender. Your strikers, you're fast, not as robust. Your defenders, you're bigger, bulkier, stronger, naturally stronger, not quite as quick. And then your midfielders sit right in the middle. They've got a little bit of everything, but technically they're the best, and they're the ones that
Hmm.
create plays. And we've got a lot of golfers who sit in the midfielder range. You're just naturally extremely talented. Um, some are a little faster, some are a little stronger, some are a little bit more flexible, some have got a little bit more skill, and we fit into that range. So I say you just have to be strong, full stop, strong, um, and robust, because you're going to spend 30 weeks a year playing golf in 10 different countries, a lot of time traveling
Yeah.
in planes, trains, and automobiles. And as you say before, you just have to be ready. When it's your time, you've got to be ready. In your
Absolutely.
first 5 years as a pro, you don't have time to be injured. So
Mm.
you gotta get after it.
Yeah, that's yeah, well said. You've got to stay strong. I think, the more weeks if anyone's played 6 weeks of golf in a row, that's still that it doesn't sound like a lot, but 6 weeks of traveling playing golf is a lot on your body, and you can't even touch on the surface of you just touch the surface of mentally, just even that is just another beast of its own. But yeah, body wise, you've got to have it right, because you don't want to be injured on the road, and that there's nothing worse than that. No, I've been lucky enough to skirt a lot of that stuff. I've been healthy throughout the whole thing, and it's funny. We've touched on this before, but how much I've noticed my development by just being consistent at home indoors, just working out on a regular basis. It's crazy. I'm like, how can I implement this now when I get on the road again? That's my next. How do I figure out my model? And everyone's is different. You've kind of got to work with minimal equipment. You know, you're going to have a couple of bands and that's about it. You might have a gym, or you might have a heavy chair in your room that you kind of have to work your way around. But it's just about improvising and staying on top of all that stuff. And flexibility you touched on. That's there's so much more that can be done with that every day. You know, like how many times you see a player's, I got a tight left hip, you know, for a right-handed golfer. That's like you got a tight IT band, or, you know, it's just nuts. It's seriously crazy. I still remember your elbow. It's just horrific. But, you know, sometimes you just got to get in there and get it done. There's no way. And there's no way it's not going to get better if you're not doing the work. And it's funny. I think about I think it was a golf training camp we did in England. I think it was with Marty, and we had a physio there. I forget his name. Great dude.
Yeah,
really.
Paul, up at the Oaks,
yeah,
golf club where Graham Walker's based.
Yeah, it was a Bracken course we played or something. I think that was. I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah, I just remember he was just like, yeah, it's going to really, really hurt now, but you'll be great tomorrow. And I'm just thinking, I think I'm about to pass out here, but yeah, you've just got to get to the other side of it. But yeah, it's a cool subject that does. Every golfer should be an elite midfielder. I think every Australian that knows a bit about footy will probably relate to that. You know, everyone wants to be the Cripper or the Tom Mitchell, or, you know, Tim Kelly when he's playing well. Kind of still stinging after the Eagles losing, but, you know, we'll move on to next year when we can actually see them in person. But growing up, you know, kind of going through your studies, kind of going back to that, who was your professional role model? Who was someone you kind of thought, I want to aspire to be them? Or were you just trying to create your own, you know, vision of who you wanted to be? I'd love to hear your response on that.
Yeah, I think from a golf perspective, I was very lucky being that it was in Melbourne. I had access to arguably every good coach in Australia, a golf coach in Australia, plus physios, biomechanics. So I had access to everyone, and they had a big influence on me and my practice. I didn't really have any biases, I suppose, was the best part. I had a lot of coaches coaching a lot of players in a lot of different ways, and I watched a lot of players succeed in a lot of different conditions, and that sort of framed me as trying to be quite open and honest with how people develop. But from a strength and conditioning point of view, I had a number of people at the VIS that probably shaped my practice a lot. Nathan Heaney was one who I took over golf from when I first started, and James Caragiorgio, Ben Willey, Harry Brennan were all my senior sort of staff at the VIS that had a big impact. They worked with all the sports. I still use. I have philosophies, I have exercises, drills that they all showed me. The best part about being an Institute of Sport is you have 7 S&C staff who cover 35 sports. So any day in the gym, you have a different athlete training in a different way. And I want to know why. Why did that person do that? For example, one exercise I prescribed this morning was given to Lydia Lassala, who won a gold medal at aerial skiing for a hip strengthening, mobility, balance drill, and I've stolen that and I use that for golfers. So who would have thought a winter sport athlete would have a big impact on the way I train golfers? So yeah, that's just a great example of that environment. And I was very lucky to be part of that for a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's I think everyone should have a vision of where they want to kind of go. You said you interned a bit and kind of worked your way through there, and that's a cool story. Really, really wicked journey. But yeah, what's the hip stretch? I just all ears just perked up. Then I'm like, he's got the hip stretch. What is it? Is it doable without bands? Is it kind of?
It is. It's standing on one leg in an RDL single leg RDL position.
Yep.
So if I'm standing on my right leg, can I turn the outside of my left hip to the roof, keep my leg straight, and then rotate back down? So I call it an aeroplane. So you kind of rotate the upper body, open up, close down. So it's you kind of take the hip through extreme internal and extreme external rotation.
Okay. All right. I might when we finish recording, I might see if
I'll send you a little WhatsApp video later, mate.
Beautiful. I'll try not fall into the wall or something. Yeah, so you hear a crash and bang soon. But yeah, before we get to my one question, I have a closing question. What would be your message to an up-and-coming junior golfer athlete wanting to progress to higher levels, whether it's elite amateur or professional? Like if you were talking to a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, someone who's obviously the best in their club, they've been noticed on the state radar, like what would be your message if you were like, at like a first intermediate squad meeting for them?
Find the other kids in your group that are better than you and watch them and try and beat them. And then find the kids or the young professionals in your state or at your club or somewhere close, find them and learn what they do, why they do it, how they do it. That's what I got told in my profession, is find someone who has the job I think I want and go and intern with them and see if you actually like it. And that's what I did. So if you're a young golfer, go and find the best professional golfer in your state or your city, go and see how good they are and go and learn why. And if there's something in your area, take it back and challenge your coach. You've got to challenge your coach. You've got to ask lots of questions to your coach. How do I get better? Why do I hit it like this? Why do I struggle in this situation? And just get really good at reviewing your own performance. That's really, really important for young players. Is in other sports, like if you are a netballer or a soccer player or an AFL footballer, every single week you sit down with 3 or 4 coaches and you review all the good things you did that week and all the bad things you did that week on the field. And it becomes just a really nice, neutral conversation. Whereas in golf, if you play well, play poorly, you react on emotion. And obviously you don't have 5 coaches watching you play and compete and looking at every shot. So just get really good at reviewing your own performance, chat to your coach and ask lots of questions.
Yeah, it's really well said. I think, challenging a coach, that's one thing I know Curtis is great at. He's very, very good at that. If anyone knows Curtis, he is really, really good at that. And reviewing your own performance and being truly honest with yourself, that's huge. And, junior putting greens, obviously there's those kids that were better. For me, it was funny. Matt Jager and Scriv were a couple of years older than I were, and I was just coming through juniors, and they were my next, like, how do I be better than them? How do I, I think it was funny I think it was a WA Open at Cottesloe when it was just a 2-rounder. Me and Maddie tied for 2 rounds for leading amateur. And I obviously idolized this guy growing up and, packing myself on the first team. I think we went 5 playoff holes or something. I ended up getting him because he hit one in the water or hit it way left or whatever it was. And I just thought, geez, I didn't feel comfortable at all. But yeah, it's like locking onto who that person is. And then you weirdly gravitate towards it. It's crazy how it happens. I still remember as a young kid thinking, all right, he's the best kid here by miles. Obviously you see his amateur career and he won everything, like just ridiculous player. And it definitely helped me. But yeah, very, very well said. Before we end this, you get to ask your one question for me. I think I know what it might be, but I like to always think before these questions rock up, what would the person ask me? But go ahead, Mackey, anything you like.
All right. This is a 2-part question.
Okay.
The first part is I want to know why all successful male WA golfers have extremely skinny calves. So to all the listeners, I want you to picture Brady Watt, Matt Jager, Jason Scrivener, Jared Felton, Minwoo Lee, Oliver Goss. So that's my first question. Why do none of you have stocky calves?
Well, it's probably not something we're aspired to. It's not like we're doing calf raises outside, but I actually don't know. It's probably not a thing we've ever even thought about. We're just trying to catch up with you guys and doing the squats and the deadlifts. We're not up to the calf raises stuff right now, but I don't know. That's an interesting question. Calf raises. Maybe I'll add that to the list of stuff.
I can add Curtis into that list. But my actual question was, and I like to ask this when you're in this position, what would you tell your younger self who is going to be turning pro tomorrow? So go back to the day that you turned pro. Mm-hmm. What would Brady Watt in 2020 tell the Brady Watt in 2013, 2014?
Ended 2013 for me. It was at the Aussie Open, just leading amateur. Sat down with mum and dad, I was getting a start at the Thailand Open the next week. Wasn't really sure, wasn't really ready. I didn't think I was ready. It's interesting because you get all these, I had a good amateur career and you get these sponsors invites and you get a bit of cash thrown at you and it's going to help you out your first couple of years. Just be ready. Be ready. I think I'd done so many good things as an amateur for that year and a half period that I was building up to this point that you're going to turn professional. I kind of had my blinders on for a second that I was just in this pursuit of getting better as a player and without even thinking about turning professional and all the things that came with that. I think just being aware of the things that come up when you turn professional, you touched on before, taxes, where you're going to live, your training bases, how you're going to keep getting better over time because you need to keep getting better. Bryson's hitting at 400 yards now and, putting better than ever. Like that's the person you're trying to chase to beat. How are you going to do that if you're still trying to figure out, is your credit card going to work or, different tax things or whatever it may be. But for me, it'd be just, I would have loved to know everything that came as a professional. Like I obviously knew a few things you hear from people and whether that was like latching onto a Brett Rumford when he was in WA or, really latching onto a Peter Fowler, reaching out to those people and not being afraid to. I think as a young kid, you get stuck on that. You're not even sure to, like if you're okay with the answer being no, then you should just ask. And I think a lot of people are scared of that or they fear the rejection. I've been lucky enough in my life that I'm not scared of failure. I'm not scared of no. So I'm going to ask anyway. And I think it was weird that, not weird, weird's the wrong word. It's something I would have done differently, probably just that year leading up to that. Like I remember having a lunch with, I think it was Terry Gale at Royal Perth. And I sat down and he spoke about a few things. I remember writing a few notes down and I looked over it again, obviously, and looking at it now. And I can see it now. It was like where your pathway was going to be for the next 5 years of where, lay out the map of how you're going to do it. And, obviously it's tough to do that and actually stay on top of that. And yeah, it's something I would have tried to surround myself and be more consistent of leading up to that, having a true mentor who's been in those shoes before going through those different pathways. Or it's just so different now because there's so Latino, there's Mackenzie Tour, there's so many different ways you can end up on a main tour. It's not so clear cut as it might have been for past generations, guys that just went over there and they Mondayed and they were in for the rest of the year. It's a little different now. There's a lot, not like there weren't better players back then, but there's just so many more players that are really good and they all hit it 300 and they all putt well. And it's just it's a grind. It's a grind and it's not for everyone. I think that's probably another thing I'd add in there. It's not for everyone. And you kind of see that very quickly in your first couple of years that a lot of professionals dislike it quickly. And then it's okay if you don't like it, if you don't like the touring life, and just walk away, do something else. And that's okay. I don't know. I'm on this mission at the moment to kind of figure out what's going on. But yeah, I guess that's with my studying and everything. But that's one thing I'm going to be doing. I probably would have actually liked to study online at some part of that journey as well. Like just keeping my mind ticking over, especially because you're so young as a 20, 22, 23-year-old. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, it's a big subject. There's so much to it. It's a good question, actually. Better than the calf one. I'll do some researching about that. Actually, I think it's a priority thing. I'm not sure if Victorians kind of prioritize that, but I'll look into it. It's been a pleasure, Mackey. Really appreciate your time. It's just fantastic. But before we close completely, I'll actually come back to what I thought the question was going to be. So yes. I distinctly remember the European golf trip, the UK trip, and one thing, you missed the fairway on 18 at St Andrews, which no one's ever missed that fairway. It's 130 meters wide. I remember you hooked it, it went out of bounds, but that's not the story. That just came to me. You actually missed the 18th fairway at St Andrews. So I don't think anyone's ever
Thanks,
done it.
mate. I appreciate that.
I'm just going to throw that in there. And I remember doing a recovery. It was at like the castle course. We had like a little gym session, like the back gym, and we're having like a spa. And you were talking about Latino America, and you're talking about like this Brazil festival you went to, and it was really funny because I remember having it seated in my mind. I was thinking, geez, that just sounds, South America sounds like the most amazing place ever. And funny enough, the next year I got to start at the Dominican Republic, Open, and top 20 at Panama. And then the next year I ended up in Rio, and I thought, geez, Mackey was right. How good's this place? I was thinking you were going to ask, was that moment a place you kind of put that aside thinking I'm going to get to Latino America one day? And I just, I did eventually, but it wasn't, it just kind of panned out that way. But it's funny how you talk about one thing and you end up somewhere, but yeah, it's a funny thing.
That's good. I ended up actually, we were talking about going to Rio for the Olympics. I remember that. That was our goal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. What a time. What a time. Anyways, Mackey, really, really appreciate your time. I'm sure, we'll talk again soon. We'll get you on the pod again when one of the boys have won again or something's happened. But all the best to the boys. Give them my well wishes, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate. Good to chat.